Having an entire country carry out school online was unheard of before 2020. COVID forcing school leaders and state officials to make those changes.
In some instances, the pandemic changed education as we know it. Kaylee Kirby shares how superintendents had to quickly navigate through the unknowns to keep kids and staff safe.
It was a foreign concept to have hundreds of school staff and thousands of kids in Northwest Ohio move their traditional in-person learning model to something that was entirely online. Before 2020, that frankly had never been done before, and not in the amount of time that they had to pivot. March 2020. The spread of COVID-19 had already started to have its impact on the Buckeye State. Each day, many wondered what would come next.
I think we forget sometimes that it was scary. People were dying. We didn't know what was making it spread, or we didn't understand it at all. There was no vaccine.
But March 12th, 2020 is the day that changed the lives for millions of Ohioans. They just didn't know it yet.
So we are announcing today that children of the state will have an extended spring break.
Ohio became the first in the nation to issue a statewide school closure.
We thought we were going to be out of work or close schools and government entities for maybe 4 or 5 days. And then the next thing we knew, we were shut down for 6 weeks. Then it was 9 weeks.
It didn't last long before things started to turn. Cases were climbing, and so was the death toll.
To go back to school now with a relatively small amount of time left by a large number of superintendents, principals, others who've expressed to me that that probably is not a good idea.
The governor closed school for the rest of the academic year. In a matter of days, districts had to pivot out of a classroom and onto a laptop.
We were not a one-to-one district at that time. I think about our tech director, who took us from having about 4,000 devices in the district to 10,000.
They had to figure out how to feed their kids.
I would not have been aware of the number of kids that eat lunch with us and don't eat again until they come back to us.
Being the superintendent of a school district and navigating a pandemic was unprecedented.
There were a lot of sleepless nights. There were a lot of days where there was no appetite. When you hear that children are ill, when you hear that you've lost an employee due to COVID, you feel a sense of helplessness.
It's a job that became harder with a senior class losing the final weeks of high school and their impending graduation.
We did a 12-hour graduation. So we stood on a stage. I remember I didn't think my feet would ever recover for 12 hours and brought kids. We lined them up in a snake kind of pattern throughout the building.
Some districts even chose to do drive-through graduations. School leaders took a first time for everything approach.
Because it never had been asked, right? You don't know what you can do until the expectation is set. And not only did they meet the expectation, they went above and beyond and exceeded expectations.
As the weeks and semesters passed, districts navigated hybrid learning, social distancing, and eventually a full return back to class. There were challenges at every turn.
There was learning loss. And in some instances, we are still working to close that gap for children who were starting in kindergarten and first grade and maybe had some challenges in learning how to read, learning how to do math.
What would you say now, 5 years since it started, are some good things that have come out of this for a school district?
I think we're all much more connected, right? Our kids, we have a pretty good balance here, I think, of how much our kids are online. So now it's a tool. It's not the only tool.
COVID-19 has changed the entire landscape of traditional schooling.
I don't know if we would have changed so quickly or evolved so quickly if it wasn't something as serious as the nature of a pandemic. On the other hand, though, I'm glad it's so far behind us.
Both superintendents say a big part of getting through the pandemic was having all of the area superintendents and health leaders constantly communicating and making decisions together. Reporting tonight, I'm Kaylee Kirby for WTOL 11.